I never knew why. Not until I heard him tell his story of his youth did I understand. Back then, he went out to work with the adults. The group fell behind schedule and couldn't make it home. They couldn't find lodging in the northern night. In such a place, one could freeze to death. Luckily, they passed a house, thinking of asking to stay overnight. But strangely, although the house was brightly lit, they searched for a long time but didn't see a single person. Even stranger, there was a table of prepared food inside. Unable to resist their hunger, they began to eat voraciously. Since they couldn't wait for the owner to return, they found a room and went to sleep. The foreman told them that 7 people couldn't all sleep on the same side, so he arranged for the grandfather to sleep facing the opposite direction. Soon, sounds filled the room, but Grandpa was startled awake by an unusual noise. He saw a pair of small white shoes suddenly dangling down from the ceiling. Grandpa focused and looked closely. It wasn't a pair of small white shoes at all. It was actually the body of a hanging ghost. He was so scared that he quickly shrank back into his blanket. The empty room was filled only with the sound of the female ghost counting. Then, everyone, as if possessed, followed the female ghost, wandering around. They wandered for a long time. Occasionally, the female ghost would stop and mutter, "There should be 7. Where's the other one?" Hearing this, Grandpa didn't dare to move at all. People tend to feel an urgent need to urinate when nervous. After a while, the room fell silent. Grandpa couldn't hold back any longer. He secretly lifted the quilt to check, but unexpectedly, a pale face suddenly appeared before him. "So you were here." Saying this, she rushed towards Grandpa, laughing. It happened in the blink of an eye. Grandpa, who had been holding his pee for a long time, finally urinated out of fright. It directly hit the female ghost. Taking advantage of her temporary retreat due to the boy's urine, Grandpa hurriedly escaped through the window. He stumbled and tumbled, running a great distance. Finally, he saw a light ahead. But at this moment, the female ghost had already caught up behind him. In the second before he lost consciousness, the sound of a rooster crowing rang in his ears. When he opened his eyes again, he had already been brought back to the house. A one-eyed Taoist priest was watching him. Standing beside the Taoist was the owner of this haunted house. Tonight was supposed to be the female ghost's 7th night. They invited an expert to appease the female ghost, but they were disturbed by a group of people. The ghost's resentment must have grown stronger. It might even return shortly. Then he the talisman on the door. Just as he finished, he heard footsteps coming from outside. He went out alone to face it. In the distance, it seemed there was a figure standing under the tree. Grandpa recognized him as the master craftsman who had employed him, but at this moment, he was possessed by a female ghost. The 6 heavenly craftsmen included carpenters. Therefore, those who worked as carpenters for many years were not afraid of ordinary evil spirits. The Taoist priest was surprised to see that the female ghost could possess the old carpenter. He was quite astonished. Grandpa heard that the female ghost had died by suicide due to temporary distress. But judging from the sounds outside, it seemed not that simple. After the fight, the Taoist priest was injured by the carpenter possessed by the female ghost. He soon realized that this was no ordinary ghost. A ghost that died naturally would not carry such strong resentment. Seeing the axe about to fall, the Taoist priest suddenly flipped over his eye patch. It turned out to be a small, delicate bagua mirror. The bagua mirror continuously refracted the moonlight from the sky onto the female ghost. She was also stimulated to cry out in pain. But heaven wasn't on the Taoist priest's side. A thick mass of dark clouds slowly obscured the moon. Without the moonlight, the bagua mirror also began to fail. Accompanying the shattering of the bagua mirror, the Taoist priest finally reacted. It must be that the client lied. Only the wronged souls who died in resentment can summon the clouds to obscure the moon. The female ghost bursts through the door. She glares fiercely at everyone. "You are all going to die." When I opened my eyes again, an old man was sitting beside me. He is the Zhang family's benefactor, generation after generation. His name is Li Luochan. He slowly got up and looked at his grandfather. "I just placed a restriction on you. So you still can't speak. Those who shouldn't have died, have died." He slowly walked to the one-eyed Taoist priest. He covered him with a white cloth. I was still a step too late. "Rest in peace, fellow Taoist." Then he took a long drag from his pipe, and told me the truth about the female ghost's wrongful death. Her name was Xiaoyan before she died. In those cannibalistic times, because of poverty, she was married off to the Su family as a child bride. Unexpectedly, not long after, her child suddenly died of a severe illness. The once harmonious family was also cast under a heavy shadow. The mistress started making Xiao Lian do the dirtiest and most exhausting work. Because of her guilt, she said nothing in complaint. But the head of the Su family was truly despicable. Whenever he had the chance, he took advantage of Xiao Lian. Naturally, she resisted every time, until one night, the head of the family, along with a few servants, forcefully violated Xiao Lian. When a person's heart dies, she couldn't even shed a single tear. Then, wearing her favorite white sneakers, she hanged herself, full of resentment. Xiao Lian had a purine constitution. coupled with the Su family's lies, which led the one-eyed Taoist to underestimate his opponent. He paid with his life this time. I used the great karma technique to seal her, thus saving your life. From now on, your family will need to perform acts of kindness for generations to come. Only by accumulating good deeds can we dispel her resentment, because she will definitely break free. 10 years later, Zhang Xiaoyan was born, but he had a tumor on his back. That night, Li Luochan appeared. She gave my grandfather a box and a talisman, and she repeatedly instructed him, if the female ghost ever appears again, he had to immediately burn this talisman. Zhang Xiaoyan also followed his family's advice. He would even take the box with him to school, until one night in his second year of high school, when he sneaked out over the wall with his roommate to stay out all night. After the excitement, he suddenly found a strange bruise around his neck. The young man spent 188 yuan online to get a fortune-telling video service, but when he saw the fortune teller, all he wanted to do was pull her collar down a bit more. After he satisfied his curiosity with his eyes, the two finally got to the point. They hadn't even started reading the face yet. The girl first noticed the small shoes swaying behind the boy. Looking at the screenshot the girl sent, Zhang Xiaoyan curled his lips. He thought the girl was deliberately photoshopping the image to scare him, but when he went to the bathroom to wash his face, he noticed something strange. A mark, like a strangulation, had appeared on his neck at some point. He started to panic, because he remembered that before his elders passed away, they had all inexplicably had similar marks on their necks. With a hesitant attitude, he slowly opened his laptop camera. He saw a figure, indeed, hanging from the back of his head, a ghost in red. His hands and feet were ice cold. He dared not move. He was only startled awake by a sound from his headphones. He felt as if he'd grasped a lifeline. He hurriedly put on his headphones. The girl told him it was a hanged ghost, and it was slowly descending. The moment this female ghost lands, will be the day Zhang Xiaoyan dies. The girl is quite capable. She also noticed that this female ghost had been sealed by a master. Otherwise, he wouldn't have lived this long. Upon hearing this, Zhang Xiaoyan remembered his small red box he'd carried since childhood. His parents told him to open it in a moment of crisis. He didn't have time to say goodbye to the girl in the video. He got up and ran toward the dormitory. Meanwhile, the girl on the other side of the video sighed regretfully, because the ghost girl's restriction could only hold for another 10 minutes at most. As expected, halfway there, Zhang Xiaoyan heard someone calling him from behind. When he turned around, a kind and friendly older sister came into view. He turned around, instantly extinguishing the two flames on his shoulders. The female ghost no longer feared him. With a mocking laugh, she charged toward Zhang Xiaoyan. The moment the ghostly figure collided with him, he began to feel disoriented. His own body started to feel unfamiliar. The female ghost controlled him, making him cover his face with his shirt. His breathing also became labored. Fortunately, his clothes weren't wet. Zhang Xiaoyan could still breathe a little air. Seeing that this method didn't work, the female ghost directly took out her own rope and forced him. Zhang Xiaoyan let out a desperate roar. What kind of hatred is this, to curse my Zhang family for 3 generations? He struggled with all his might, but under the female ghost's control, it was all in vain. But this strike also caused the sarcoma on his back to rupture. Blood started to pour out. This move backfired. The female ghost was instead forced out of his body by the strange sarcoma. Zhang Xiaoyan regained consciousness when his roommates slapped him awake. They saw Zhang Xiaoyan running out in a panic. Worried that he was in danger, they chased after him. But when they arrived, they found him lying unconscious on the ground. Zhang Xiaoyan didn't have time to think about why the female ghost spared him. He rushed back to the dormitory as quickly as possible to find the red box. Inside was the talisman paper that Li Luochan had given him years ago. After reading the letter that recorded the events, Zhang Xiaoyan also understood the origin of the woman in the red dress. He then ignited the talisman paper with determination in his heart. From then on, a strange and mysterious door opened for him. An elderly woman holding the same talisman came to the school. For his own life, Zhang Xiaoyan spent a fortune to invite the old lady to dinner. At the dinner table, he learned that Li Luochan was the leader of the Tongxing lineage. But more than 10 years ago, when they went to Jiufu Mountain to seal the ghost, an accident happened to Li Luochan. Out of nowhere, an eagle dropped a bird droppings, which hit the 5 elements mirror used to seal the ghost. Without the mirror's guardianship, the cave entrance is like the gates of hell wide open. Tongxing Yi is tasked with exterminating demons and evil. Li Luochan uses Taoist methods to reseal the cave entrance. She entrusts the will and the legacy of the Tongxing lineage to the elder. Today, she comes with only one purpose: to take on a disciple in place of her brother. But Zhang Xiaoyan knows he is not capable of doing so. The decision to face death for the sake of all under heaven. So he wanted to refuse. But before he could speak, the old woman continued to explain. This line of work is a high-risk profession. If you have 300,000 yuan, you don't need to become my apprentice. I'll help you solve the problem of that hanged ghost. Master Li Luochan, I honor you. Please accept my bow. Zhang Xiaoyan hypnotized himself. It definitely wasn't because of the high salary that he was taking on this apprenticeship, but the old woman could see right through him, no matter the reason. At least he helped his friend fulfill a regret. Then she explained to Zhang Xiaoyan. The sarcoma on his back is called the Qianquan bag. Back then, Li Luochen used the great karma technique to save his grandfather. By chance, this masterpiece was also created, but the specific divine abilities still need him to explore on his own. Then, he left behind Li Luochen's relic and turned to leave. Before leaving, he left a business card. He told Zhang Xiaoyan to figure out how to survive the night. If he passed this test, he could call him for further contact. Zhang Xiaoyan also learned the elder's title, Bell's Woman. He opened the scroll. This item is called the Old Child Scroll. It records many Taoist techniques and divine powers. What Zhang Xiaoyan didn't know was that this item also had another name. It was called the Book of Bai Yan. Old fans call it thrilling, because there are 8 more scrolls like this. There are 8 more. When walking alone at night and hearing someone call your name from behind, don't look back, because there are 3 flames on top of your head and shoulders. Turning around will blow out the 2 flames on your shoulders. If there's something dirty behind you at that moment, you'll be in big trouble. If it weren't for the dirty thing, that wallet would have been in trouble. Zhang Xiaoyan heard the voice of the girl he secretly admired, Xu Xiang, from behind. His heart fluttered, and he wanted to turn around to investigate. But he didn't turn around. He took one step after another, retreating behind the girl. But when he saw the small white shoes on the girl's feet, a cold sweat instantly broke out. He then took out the prepared water gun, and sprayed it right at the girl's face. It was filled with black dog blood. The female ghost would be uncomfortable for a long time after this. Taking this opportunity, Zhang Xiaoyan sprinted away. To survive the night, he had prepared 2 things. One was black dog blood. The other was the wooden beam in his hand. The items most closely connected to the hanged ghost, besides the rope around its neck, is this roof beam. As long as this wood is set alight, the hanged ghost will feel the same pain when it appears. But as Zhang Xiaoyan just struck a match, he suddenly felt an awful silence around him. Then he felt a pair of icy cold hands clutching his neck. The female ghost is extremely vicious. She pushes him and slams him hard into the wall. Zhang Xiaoyan is hit but remains calm. He knows that to survive tonight, he can only rely on himself. The moment the beam is set on fire, the female ghost is scared and collapses to the ground. She has haunted the Zhang family for 3 generations. All her resentment has been worn away. The moment the roof beam was lit, its true form was revealed. She knew that with her current strength, she could no longer withstand the roof beam. Her path as a ghost was also coming to an end. For a moment, emotions from her time as a human surged back. A tear unexpectedly rolled down her cheek. I'm sorry. Kill me. I no longer have anything to hold on to. Zhang Xiaoyan picked up the tear. It was the first time he had heard that ghosts could cry. Then he threw the wooden beam away. Leave. Don't hurt anyone again. Although the words were spoken, the female ghost behind him didn't respond. Zhang Xiaoyan turned around and a long black, ghostly shadow enveloping Xiao Lian. Before he could act, the shadow opened its mouth and swallowed Xiao Lian. It seemed that because of the ghost tear, the ghostly shadow did not attack Zhang Xiaoyan. It only silently watched him leave from the shadows. In the morning, he dialed the bell woman's number. I told him that although I'd gotten rid of the Xiaoxi, I'd run into something else. Popo acted quickly. She sent a package over at noon. Zhang Xiaoyan opened it to find a wolfskin waistcoat. Ling Dengpo said it was a gift to celebrate his official acceptance into the Tongxing men. This waistcoat is a good thing. After putting it on, I can perform a summoning ritual. I had just memorized the incantation when my roommate, the fat guy, urgently came knocking at the door. It turned out that a girl in our class, Gao Lily, had died. Her parents were working away. Her young brother was living with their grandparents. But recently, the black market lottery in the city suddenly became a craze. The old couple, with nothing to do, had even started playing the illegal lottery. They started winning frequently. Soon, it spiraled out of control. They used all their savings to bet. But in the following days, they lost every bet. They never won once. The elderly couple was now obsessed. They decided to use the money their son earned, working away from home, to try again. Normal people can't understand the mindset of these gamblers. They even prepared a plate of poisoned dumplings. If they failed again this time, they would just come back and end it all with those. But fate has its quirks. Gao Lily came back during lunch break to see her brother. Having not eaten, she saw a plate of dumplings on the table. After eating a few, she died of poisoning. After hearing about the tragedy that befell the girl, both teenagers sighed for this top student. Meanwhile, Ding Yu, who was listening intently, hurriedly interjected, what happened next? Later, after the elderly couple returned home from buying lottery tickets, they found their granddaughter dead, and went completely mad. It was the neighbors who called the police. But when the police arrived, they discovered something strange. The family's 6-month-old grandson was also missing, without a trace. Some neighbors speculated that he might have been eaten by their dog. The girl was terrified upon hearing this. The boy beside her quickly comforted her. The 2 boys had long been eyeing Dingyue, Everyone is trying to show off in front of the girl. In the end, a boy named Jiang can bets with the fat guy. If he dares to bring the dog he mentioned to school tonight, he will admit defeat. The loser will have to drop out. The fat guy, naturally unwilling to lose face in front of the goddess, immediately agrees. But Zhang Xiaoyan can't help but sigh inwardly, thinking this is bad. Gao Lily was a person who died a violent death. She belongs to the underworld, with no place for her in small temples. Moreover, if we calculate the days, tomorrow will be her 7th day. If we go to her house and stir things up, something will definitely go wrong. Not wanting to see his friend face an accident, Zhang Xiaoyan could only helplessly say, "I'll go with you tonight. But we must finish everything before midnight." The two elderly people were addicted to gambling. They were about to gamble away all the hard-earned money they planned to send back home for their child. They had also prepared a plate of poisoned dumplings. If they lost this time, they planned to end it all. But who knew, their oldest granddaughter came home during lunch break. She accidentally ate the poisoned dumplings. By the time the police arrived, the two elderly people had already gone mad. The little grandson of this family also disappeared without a trace. The 3 boys in front of me were betting with their classmates. They planned to explore the haunted house the night before the girl's 7th day. The boy nicknamed Little Six, confident in his courage, was the first to provoke the dog this family raised. At first, nothing happened. The black dog ate greedily, devouring the chicken sausages full of starch. But as time went by, Xiao Lu still didn't get up. He was still muttering to himself, "Eat more. Eat your fill so you can lead the way." Zhang Xiaoyan and the others also felt something was wrong. The fat man cautiously stepped forward and called out Xiao Lu's name. "Don't touch me. Eat more. It will help show the way." At this moment, Xiao Lu was acting crazy, as if he had turned into a different person. Zhang Xiaoyan pulled the aside. He told him that Xiao Lu might have been possessed by the vengeful spirit of Gao Lily. It wasn't even 11 o'clock yet. Even if they were encountering ghosts, it shouldn't be this early. While Zhang Xiaoyan was still thinking of a solution, Xiao Lu put his hands on both of their shoulders from behind. "What are you two chatting about?" The two of them quickly turned around. Xiao Lu pointed at the fat man. "You, go tear down the door gods posted on the door for me." Only then did Zhang Xiaoyan realize what was happening. It is estimated that after Gao Lily's death, her vengeful spirit was scared of the door god on the gate, which is why it remained trapped in the courtyard. The possessed Xiao Lu saw that the two were hesitating, and grabbed Zhang Xiaoyan by the neck. "Hurry up. Stop stalling. If you don't go, I'll strangle him." The fat man hurried to the front door and started removing the door god, but he was cautious. He took the entire door god down. Since the ghost was afraid of the door god, maybe this door god picture could scare the female ghost away. He sprinted toward Xiao Lu at full speed. He slapped the door god picture onto his head like a talisman. This move left Zhang Xiaoyan in shock. He slowly began to speak. "Fatty, what do you think this thing is called a door god for? It only works when it's pasted on the door. You tore it down. You're fooling no one." Seeing Xiao Lu angered, the two of them got up and ran. But he only remembered when he reached the door. He couldn't leave his companions behind like this. Zhang Xiaoyan took off his coat, revealing a wolfskin waistcoat underneath. He really didn't want to use this method. The spirit summoning techniques of the Chuma Xian all involved sacrificing lifespan. Before he could perform the ritual, he saw Xiao Lu follow the black dog out the door. The two of them followed all the way, and arrived at an abandoned factory behind the school. Zhang Xiaoyan immediately thought of the shadow that devoured Xiao Lian, which was nearby at that time. He wondered if there was any connection between the two. By the time they reached the fence, the female ghost had already controlled Xiao Lu and made him stand on the edge of the well. He shouted, "Brother," into the well and jumped in. Meanwhile, a dark figure emerged from the well. This thing has the power to beguile. Fatty was also captivated by it, desperately walking towards the dark figure. Seeing his two friends about to meet with misfortune, Zhang Xiaoyan prepared to perform his summoning ritual. He knelt down. He clasped his hands together. He shouted loudly. He begged old Master Husan for help. Then, his eyes went black, and he lost consciousness. But his body slowly stood up. He looked very strange at this moment. He kept muttering to himself. Then he lifted his collar to look, wearing a wolfskin vest. This must be one of Xiao Lingdan's disciples. With your cultivation, you can't hire Husan Taiyi. Even I, Husan Shan, would be a bit reluctant to take this on. At this moment, it seemed like there was, indeed, a strange soul within Zhang Xiaoyan's body, which added a touch of femininity and charm to his appearance. The events that followed were things he heard from the fat man. He could vaguely see Zhang Xiaoyan and a dark figure struggling together. As Zhang Xiaoyan bit, the dark figure slowly dissipated. He regained consciousness. He was awakened by the fat guy again. Seeing Xiao Lu fainting by the well, the two finally felt at ease. Fortunately, nothing major happened during the trio's outing today. The fat man turned his head and found something glowing faintly by the well. He saw several large characters written on it. The demon root has not been removed. Do not approach the ancient well. Leave immediately. You will lose 3 years of life. Hu San Shan is coming. Although the fat man couldn't understand it, but Zhang Xiaoyan understood what they meant. He sacrificed 3 years of his life to bring in Hu San Shan, yet it still didn't solve the root of the problem. He thought the matter was settled, but unexpectedly, an accident happened the next day. The headmaster was announcing on stage the punishment for the 3 students who didn't return home at night. Xiao Lu, however, went wild and stabbed him. Even when everyone tried to hold him back, the headmaster gritted his teeth. The police arrived quickly. The headmaster hurriedly stepped forward to complain. I was just announcing a disciplinary notice, and this little brat wanted to kill me. The police officer seemed used to this scene. He took out a rubber band and flicked it against Xiao Lu's forehead. The young man immediately closed his eyes and passed out. Come on, tell me, what exactly happened? The group of bandits, in order to keep warm, actually used a living person as firewood, but they didn't know they had already broken a taboo. The souls of those who die under the locust tree are controlled by its roots. They turn into a kind of ghostly creature. This creature can steal people's souls. Those attacked are left with nothing but an empty husk. After explaining everything to Officer Ma, they learned that the ghost was called the ghost-faced demon root. Seeing little Six, unconscious and fat, they wept. If he hadn't insisted on gambling with others, his friend wouldn't have ended up like this. Zhang Xiaoyan completely lost it. He took the unconscious man out to seek revenge on the creature from the well, but he wasn't blinded by hatred. Instead, he searched for items to use for casting spells. Then, he contacted the bell lady for help. He wanted to see if he could save Xiao Lu's soul. The old woman declined, saying her old bones couldn't handle it anymore, but she would send a fellow Taoist to assist him. When he met with the helper in the afternoon, he realized it was someone familiar. It was the fortune teller he had met online before. Zhang Xiaoyan informed Tang Luoxue of the recent events. The two of them agreed to go exorcise the demon together that evening. As night fell, he began setting up the formation. He positioned the fat man and the dog and chicken in a triangular formation. This formation is called the Three Gatherings Golden Formation. It requires a dog, a chicken, and a monkey to be arranged. Then, he placed an axe in the center. He formed a hand seal and muttered incantations. The axe in the formation was surrounded by a golden light. The weapon was enchanted and set into motion. The two of them prepared their tools and arrived at the well. They just had to wait for Tang Luoxue to arrive and then they could descend to rescue the soul. But the helper never showed up. Instead, the head of the teaching department appeared here for some unknown reason. He immediately started scolding them. Young and already going down the wrong path. Do you want to commit murder with that axe? Give me the axe. The fat man saw him try to approach and grab the weapon. He immediately hugged her. Then, he told Zhang Xiaoyan to go down and save the soul first. Just as they were arguing, a ghostly face slowly peeked out from the well. The room suddenly fell silent. The disciplinary master dropped the act. A 200-gene fatty effortlessly lifted his hand. Just as the ghost-faced demon root was about to devour the fatty's soul, a wine bottle came flying. My apologies, friend. I was drinking and missed the time. I'm truly sorry. The head of the department can't stand people like this. Those who try to show off at a critical moment, commanding the demon root to attack the girl. Just as their gazes met, the drunkenness on the girl instantly faded away. Her pair of red eyes fixed firmly on the demon root. She was directly seduced by Tang Luoxue. She turned around and charged toward the head of the department. But he is obviously someone with remarkable skills. A single slap is enough to scatter the demon root. I wondered where that foul smell came from. Turns out it's a yellow weasel. Tang Luoxue, possessed by an immortal, swiftly dodged. Recognizing the yellow immortal, and still being so arrogant, this person must have quite a bit of ability. She just stabilized her posture. The man on the opposite side cast a powerful fireball spell. Tang Luoxue was knocked to the ground. Little thing. Even if the old immortal from the Huang family comes, I won't be afraid. Today, I'll make sure your soul never returns. The man was about to make a move, when the cold muzzle of a gun was pressed to the back of his head. Officer Ma didn't hesitate and fired. Then, have Tang Luoxue go to Zhongxi Temple to deliver a message. Say that Ma San asked him for help, because he knew the handgun wouldn't be able to defeat the man before him. Yesterday, he was stabbed by Xiao Lu. The wound was 10 centimeters deep into his lower back. Yet this man is acting like nothing happened. While they were chatting, the man suddenly stood up. The man with the handgun fired and jumped into the well. Ma Saner looked at the bullets in his hand, a bit puzzled. He had suspected that this man was already dead. He had deliberately carved a demon warding spell on the bullets, but now it seemed to have little effect. Tang Luoxue, upon hearing this, added from the side, his soul is very strong and can resist temptation. He's definitely not some zombie or dead thing. The group quickly divided their tasks. Luo Shui went to seek reinforcements. Zhang Xiaoyan and Ma Saner went down the well to exterminate the demon. After walking a few steps, they discovered that in front of them stood a large tree, made of ghost-faced demon roots. Countless demon roots attacked them. Fortunately, Zhang Xiaoyan was protected by the tears of a female ghost. The group of demon roots did not dare to approach. At this moment, the director had recovered. Seeing that the demon roots could do nothing to them, he immediately injected his spiritual energy into the ground. The tree made of demon roots slowly began to separate. A headless ghost figure emerged from within. Its lower body resembled a black cauldron. A headless, malevolent spirit hung in the air. This is a ghostly creature that only exists in legends. The half-cut jar. The director actually cultivated such an immature ghostly creature here. Ma San didn't believe in evil. He grabbed the axe and swung it at the half-cut jar. A loud clash of metal echoed. The ghostly creature was unharmed. He swiftly stabbed his palm into his chest. Ma San stared blankly at the pierced heart. He never expected his years of cultivation to be undone here. Such an injury is useless to treat at the hospital now. Might as well go all in. He used his heart's blood to perform a desperate technique. Although it would only last as long as a burned incense, it should be enough to deal with the immature half-baked cultivator. The tide of the battle turned. He pressed Banjigang to the ground and beat him mercilessly. With an axe blow, the demonic root behind the monster was severed. Its whole body instantly collapsed to the ground. Seeing this, the headmaster didn't get angry, but laughed instead. Because without the demonic root's control, Banjigang would be like a mad dog let loose. Nothing can hold me back anymore. Indeed, suddenly, the fallen half of the jar attacked. Ma San'er was seized from behind. A demonic root tried to devour his soul, but Zhang Xiaoyan repelled it with ghost tears. Ma San'er was now in despair. He drew an incantation to invite a ghost on his back. No matter whether it's a god or a ghost that possesses him later, let Zhang Xiaoyan just run for his life. Being able to save one life now is. The director won't let them cast spells. He pointed at the two of them, but with a soft sound. The summoning ritual was also complete. My disciple, I didn't expect we'd meet like this. I left this world too early. I couldn't teach you the Tao personally. This move today. You must watch carefully. The Qinquan bag behind you is a great opportunity one left for you. Let me teach you how to use it. People in this world have their joys and sorrows. Should there be any evil spirits or monsters, if there is evil in the human world, quickly come into my bag. What he summoned was Li Luochan's vengeful spirit. With one move of his universe bag, he forced the director's inner vengeful spirit out. This thing is no pushover. It was able to escape the suction force of the universe bag. Although the main entity has left, the rampaging half-cylindrical jar is the real trouble. Li Luochan sighed inwardly. He couldn't watch his disciple die. He was also afraid that this ghostly entity would wreak havoc upon the world once released. He then performed the soul absorption technique of the Tongxing lineage, forcefully possessing the half-cylindrical jar. Zhang Xiaoyan didn't even have a chance to speak to his master. The soul's fire ignited on the half-broken jar. In his desperate cry, Li Luochan's soul and the half-broken jar were both reduced to ashes in the furnace. A tattoo does not guarantee protection, as old Zhong says. Trying to avoid ghosts only attracts thieves. A tattoo does not protect the eyes, as the saying goes. With open eyes, Guangdong kills among the living. But the man would not listen to the advice. He had the Zhongdao pattern tattooed across his entire back. But who would have thought that after he gained weight, the fat on his back covered the eyes of the Zhongdao pattern? This angered the Ghost King. Confused, the man put on a burial suit in advance, waiting for death. Not only that, his family members often became possessed by evil spirits. Fortunately, they ordered a demon exorcising service on Didi. Li Changsheng and the others saved the man's life. The method was simple. The man just needed to return to his original figure. This would prevent the excess fat from blocking his vision. The strange occurrences in their family would disappear completely. Afterward, they received their payment for this task. The two of them took the money and went to the funeral shop. The fat man who bargained over buying these things was quite annoying. They bought a bunch of sacrificial offerings. In the end, they still couldn't save their good brother, Xiao Lu. But the others managed to survive. Just then, the two of them saw Jiang Qin abusing Xiao He. If it weren't for that bet, none of this would have happened. At this moment, old and new grievances surged in their hearts. A group of people started fighting. Then, two of the most popular girls in class arrived. They managed to pull everyone apart. But clearly, this group of boys wasn't ready to let it go. They left after saying, "Don't leave after school." Lu Yusin was kind by nature. She gently stroked the beaten little dog. But the usually very clever little black, but it viciously knocked the girl down. The frightened girl hurriedly ran away. But she didn't notice that the longevity lock around her neck had been taken by Xiao He. Xiao He, as if showing off, brought the item to Zhang Xiaoyan. But the young man was confused. Could it be that Xiao He also knows about his secret crush on Lu Yusin, and wants to create an opportunity for them to meet? Didn't think it through. After school, the two groups fought again. Two fists can't beat four hands. In the end, it was Wang Lang, who arrived just in time, that saved them. He was the same fatty who had angered Zhong Dao earlier. After losing weight, he's no longer plagued by misfortune. Wang Lang is a notorious local thug. With him backing Zhang Xiaoyan, the other side no longer dared to make a move. Seeing everyone leave, Ding Yu, who liked Jiang Kan, quickly stepped forward to comfort him. But she inadvertently saw a longevity lock on the ground. The girl had no common sense at all. She dared to wear anything she picked up. Wearing it, trouble indeed ensued. The girl began to foam at the mouth. Her whole body convulsed uncontrollably. Fatty is Ding Yu's loyal backup. Ashui Comics, he asked Zhang Xiaoyan to help him see what's going on. Xiaoyan immediately noticed the black spot on her chest. That blackened amulet. To find out the reason, they have to ask Lu Yusen. Finally, everyone met at the hospital. Lu Yusen said she was frail and sickly as a child. Her mother commissioned an old woman to make this amulet. But I don't know why others faint. After wearing it, Zhang Xiaoyan had been studying the Lao Tong Chanwan scroll for some time. He realized that it was definitely not a normal longevity lock. The old woman who made the lock probably had a problem too. He then told this to Ling Dangpa. Only those born with Yin destinies, who wear the longevity lock will cause it to backfire on others. And this lock, once worn by an outsider, is necessary to ward off the child's evil spirits. Then he warned Zhang Xiaoyan to be careful tonight, saying he would arrive as soon as possible. There are 36 evil spirits on the road, and the evil spirits encountered are different. For example, when a Shui was a child, he experienced the deep water evil spirit. Luckily, he was saved by an old woman. And Ding Yu, having worn the longevity lock of someone with an evil fate, might forcibly attract the appearance of the Guansha tonight. Even Zhang Xiaoyan can handle the usual Guansha, but if they encounter the King of the Pass, a death-related test, no one can do anything. As night fell, Zhang Xiaoyan was awakened by a burst of crying. He didn't know who had turned off the lights. He immediately realized this was the Little Night Hoof barrier. This barrier isn't difficult. You just need to activate the light source to suppress those undergoing the tribulation. Then have the fat man scatter a circle of grains around the girl. These can defend against evil spirits. Finally, open the window. Stick the yellow talisman on the outside of the house to send the evil spirit away. But just then, an anomaly occurred. The window was shattered by an inexplicable force. The sky also began to drizzle. Zhang Xiaoyan knew that Thunderbolt Guan was probably coming. Just as the fat man stuck his head out to paste the talisman, a powerful push came from behind. Fortunately, Zhang Xiaoyan reacted quickly and grabbed him. At this moment, Lu Yusen seemed to be controlled by something, wanting to kill the two of them. Zhang Xiaoyan was unable to resist because he was holding on to the fat man. He was soon pushed down as well. Now the two hapless fellows were hanging outside the fourth-floor window. At that height, a fall would leave them with lifelong disabilities, at best. Lu Yusen also came to the window. She slowly pushed Zhang Xiaoyan's feet outwards. You should definitely avoid encountering old women who are still wandering around the hospital at 3 a.m. Stay away from them. It was simply because the fat guy's laugh was too ugly. She pushed him down from the third floor. Zhang Xiaoyan was heartbroken. One by one, his friends were dying. Fortunately, Lu Yusen woke up. She pulled him back inside. Zhang Xiaoyan wanted to look for the fat guy who had fallen. But to his surprise, standing outside the door was the old woman who pushed the fat man down. Her eyes glimmered faintly in the dark. Countless moths followed her as they rushed into the room. The dust from the moths surrounded the two of them. Their consciousness began to blur. After a while, the two of them, as if possessed, began to dance with the moths. The scarred old woman used a flashlight to guide the moths out the window. Zhang Xiaoyan and the other person were also about to jump down. In a critical moment, a light behind them suddenly turned on. Ma Sanner, who had narrowly escaped death, was staying in the same hospital as them. When he got up during the night, he noticed something unusual in the hallway. He followed the scent and rushed over. With his help, he successfully woke up the two who had lost their senses. But he had already used his last yellow talisman. Now, facing the old woman's attack, he could no longer use spells to fight back. Fortunately, after the last battle with the half-pot man, his psychic power and cultivation had improved slightly. Now he could try activating the Maoshan school's treasured item, the summoning immortal purple talisman. Its power far surpasses that of ordinary yellow talismans, but it consumes a lot of magic power. His master told him when passing it down, that no matter what happens, he must wear it at all times. With this talisman's enhancement, he began to face off against the old woman controlling the venomous insects. With a single strike, he shattered her arm. Unfortunately, the burden of the purple talisman on his body was too great, and Ma Sanner spat out a mouthful of old blood, too weak to continue fighting. She finally found someone with a natural and auspicious fate, and secured a life repayment lock. She wanted to use it to avoid disasters. But now, not only has the life repayment lock been broken, it has also triggered a backlash of calamity. Years of planning have been ruined in an instant. She wants to kill everyone. But she can't waste the life of this little girl with a natural and auspicious fate. Just as she was about to speak, the Bell Lady finally arrived. She was wearing a mask of the Maoshan Taoist priestess. She raised her hand and cracked the whip. The sound of the whip and the screams echoed from the scarred old woman. Having suffered a setback, she quickly summoned her personal goo worm. This goo worm was a hybrid of a moth and a snail. This is a very rare method in Miaoqiang's witchcraft. But Granny Bell calmly turned around. She pinched her nose with one hand and raised her forehead with the other. In the next second, she called upon the celestial spirit and a small bell possessed her. At this moment, she looked nothing like a woman over 70 years old. With a light leap, she could attach herself to the ceiling. The scarred old woman was already severely injured. Heaven's way cannot be defied. The old woman, who wanted to avoid natural disasters, ultimately, could not escape the punishment of fate. Zhang Xiaoyan was awakened by Xiao He this time. After he settled the injured people, the Guansha attacked again. This trial is called the Five Ghosts Trial. It will pull a person's soul toward the gate of hell. The old woman hung a bell on Gong Yu's ear. They instructed Zhang Xiaoyan to simply follow the sound of the bell. Bringing Ding Yu's soul back would allow him to pass. But his path became increasingly strange. When he stopped, he had already arrived at the hospital morgue. Seeing Ding Yu's soul about to enter the gates of hell, Zhang Xiaoyan hastily used a secret technique to immobilize her. At that moment, the ghost gate slowly opened. A white lantern poked its head out first. Then a ghost official followed closely behind. Zhang Xiaoyan knew that Fatty had a crush on Ding Yu. He desperately channeled his magic to protect her soul. Thanks to his efforts, the ghost official ultimately didn't discover Ding Yu. He was just about to breathe a sigh of relief. The soul of the scar-faced old woman also appeared here. Zhang Xiaoyan couldn't resist her voodoo. But now that she has turned into a ghost, it's easier to deal with her. He silently recited the incantation for the Qiankuan bag. He easily captured this ghostly soul. But at this moment, a sudden change occurred. 5 ghostly figures appeared inside the door. Soul guiding and soul retrieving are the duties of the impermanent ghost messengers. Seeing Zhang Xiaoyan secretly detaining the soul, he spoke up to demand its return. But the young man didn't intend to return it to the ghost messengers. This old woman committed many evil deeds. He had to eliminate her with his own hands. Seeing a mortal daring to defy him, the ghost messengers decided to teach him a lesson. Having just beaten him a few times, Ma Sanner's voice came from a distance. My friend is young and doesn't know better. I kindly ask you, the ghost officials, to show some mercy and spare him. Afterward, I'm willing to burn 500 billion coins, and 5,000 ingots for you. The ghost officials seemed a bit moved. But then they remembered the instructions from Lord Wu Chang before leaving. They still refused. Seeing that these little ghosts were not showing any respect, Ma Sanner instantly froze his expression. Since you're unwilling to resolve this peacefully, then none of you will leave today. The ghost envoy saw that he was actually resisting. He immediately swung the soul-locking chain, piercing through Ma Sanner's body. In his final moments, he finally understood the way of all living beings that he had cultivated. His power surged explosively. The ghosts inside the venue were no match for him. Although his Tao heart had broken through, after many battles, his body had already been battered and torn. A mysterious figure appeared, guiding him into the ghost gate. The matter came to a close. The fat man who had fallen from the building never woke up, until one day, he found that Xiao He could actually write on the ground with its paws. Combining this with how it woke him up earlier, it was exactly the same as Fatso's way. He then realized that Fatso's soul had unexpectedly entered Xiao He's body. He was still thinking about how to get Fatso's soul back, when a figure suddenly landed. When he saw Tang Luoxue again, one of her eyes was still bleeding. Dao Yu. This time, it's a problem. It's a big one. I ran into old Dean. For yellow weasels are picking up a big red coffin, preparing for a wedding. The groom, though, is a toad riding a white horse. All these ghostly things fell off a car. A group of narcotics officers is checking vehicles at the highway entrance. Suddenly, an out-of-control pickup truck drove straight toward the concrete barrier on the side of the road. They rescued a survivor. The young man pointed at the red coffin on the truck, and screamed wildly, "Burn it! Burn it! Burn it now!" Before the police could ask any more questions, the drug-sniffing dog started barking furiously at the coffin. A famous, brave police officer opened the red coffin. Inside, there was a heavily made-up woman lying. Before he could make his next move, a stone flew out of nowhere and struck him on the forehead. The male officer was knocked unconscious, bleeding profusely. Bang! Just as everyone was still in shock, for yellow weasels appeared at the bottom of the coffin. Tang Luoyu feared that the coffin contained drugs. Step forward and block them. The yellow weasels knelt on the ground upon encountering the obstruction. The female officer thought they were intimidated by the righteous aura she carried, but a sudden chill ran down her back. A toad wearing a chest flower appeared in everyone's sight, accompanied by its cry. The yellow weasels seemed to receive some kind of signal. The order to start releasing the toxic gas attack is given. Tang Luoyu has a protective talisman from her younger sister, so she's unharmed. But her colleagues have all been knocked out, lying on the ground. Soon, several yellow weasels jump onto her and begin to tear at her. The girl is grabbed, her modesty exposed. The talisman on her chest is also shattered. At this point, she can no longer resist the toxic gas from the yellow weasels. Her head tilts, and she faints. An eerie scene appeared on the highway. It was like an ancient wedding procession. The groom rode a white horse in front, while the bride followed in a grand red sedan chair. When my sister's amulet was activated earlier, Tang Luoxue received a prompt. Fortunately, she arrived just in time with Second Master Huang. Otherwise, my sister would have been taken away. Second Master approached and communicated with one of its kind. He learned that Tang Luoyu had disturbed Yin Grandpa's wedding, but no matter how persuasively he pleaded, the other party refused to let the girl go. When Second Master turned around and threw the wine flask to Tang Luoxue, she knew he was angry. Accompanied by the 58-degree Shadozi burning his throat, Tang Luoxue also displayed her Ma Xian art. You bunch of treacherous scoundrels. Let me say a few words to you. You really think you're something. She then charged at the 4 yellow weasels, a combination of swift strikes and deadly suppression. Then, Second Master stared at them, his eyes bloodshot. Aishui drew a comic, asking the toad to release the person. Seeing that old Yin refused to speak, Second Master struck down with a palm, but only shattered the paper horse's head. It turned out that the Yin old master had been transferred to the red coffin by a weasel. Second Master didn't want to get entangled. After leaving a few harsh words, he hoisted Tang Luoyu and was about to leave. Just then, the female corpse in the coffin suddenly stood up. Second Master was greatly startled. Because a weasel possessing a dead person would destroy one's cultivation, there was no time to say anything. The female corpse was already charging at him. With the person behind it, the yellow weasel's combat power was instantly enhanced. At this moment, its strength was actually on par with Second Master. As the saying goes, dogs bark like dogs. Cats scratch like cats. When a yellow weasel fights, it's all about those claws. The deeper the cultivation, the weasel's claws become sharper. Second Master is, after all, a cultivated yellow weasel immortal. He seized the opportunity and removed the yellow weasel from Chiu Chu's corpse. Without the yellow weasel's control, Chiu Chu's body fell again. Just as Second Master turned to check Tang Luoyu's injuries, Yin Leoi secretly crawled out of the female corpse's mouth. Swish! The long tongue pierced through Second Master's shoulder blade from behind. Fortunately, she reacted quickly and avoided being struck in the vital spots by the subsequent strikes. At this moment, the woman was lying on the ground, in a posture that was extremely familiar to a shui. It was indeed that move. Unfortunately, Second Master didn't know the technique of the descending palm. He could only be knocked away by old Granny Yin. At this moment, he finally straightened up. He grabbed Lord Huang Air and asked him where that arrogance from earlier had gone. Lord Huang Air wouldn't go easy on him. He bit down on the old Yin master's arm. Faced with such provocation, he was enraged. He slammed Lord Huang Air's head into the ground. Since becoming an immortal, Lord Huang Air had never experienced such humiliation. He gritted his teeth and transmitted a message to the girl inside his body. Luo Shui, lend me 3 years of your lifespan. With the boost of the added lifespan, Yin Leoi's tongue was severed by his claw. Then, even more fierce attacks relentlessly struck Yin Leoi. Various Huangxian spells were cast by him. Yin Leoi was left with no ability to fight back. In the end, he revealed the true form of Yin Laoyi. He was about to send him to the underworld, but she had actually forgotten that his true form was a toad. Her palm was being corroded by the venom on his back. Second Master sensed the power of the venom. He quickly shook off Yin Laoyi and fled. As time passed, the venom was nearly spreading all over his body. In desperation, he could only turn to Zhang Xiaoyan for help. What a coincidence. The Tongxing records just happened to mention the legendary grandfather Yin. A bird with 3 legs is a golden bird. A frog with 3 legs is a golden toad. The golden toad is a symbol of wealth and longevity. A 1,000-year-old golden toad can grow 4 tongues. When it reaches 10,000 years, it will grow a pair of dragon horns on its head. May those who like this post make a fortune this year. In ancient times, the golden toad also had the power to ward off evil and suppress the Yin energy. Once, a master of the Tongxing system witnessed the scene of a golden toad suppressing a corpse. It was a village infected with a plague. Everyone turned into zombies. At the moment when Feng Baiyu was surrounded by danger, an old Taoist priest in a red robe arrived to save the day. A 4-legged golden toad was embroidered on that red robe. As the old Taoist priest cast his spell, the surrounding zombies were scared away by the golden light from the toad. The embroidered gold on his clothes came to life. Under its power, the zombies obediently followed the old Taoist priest away. This is the Jin Dao's method of controlling corpses. Legend says they drive the bodies to a secret place. Whenever a Jindarin accumulates a certain number of corpses, they can achieve complete merit and ascend to heaven in broad daylight, and the gold they cultivate will be left here to suppress the masses. Zhang Xiaoyan guesses the Yin master they encountered must be related to the Jindarin. They went to Wenzhong Temple to seek help from Master Suyuan. Tang Luoxue was now extremely weak. To make matters worse, old Master Yin arrived to seek revenge. First, countless crows invaded the sacred Buddhist grounds. Then, several figures fell from the sky. A monk stepped forward to probe them. He discovered they were all made of paper. These paper figures were impervious to blows from sticks. Any flattened parts quickly puffed back up. Seeing the situation was dire, the abbot led everyone in forming the Luohan subduing demons formation. The paper figures trapped in the formation, illuminated by the Buddha's light, began to burn fiercely. Zhang Xiaoyan was watching intently, when Xiao He, possessed by his friend, spoke up, reminding him that there was still one that got away. At that moment, only the weakened Tang Luoxue remained in the room. Zhang Xiaoyan was startled and ran into the house. He realized there was no time left. He used the golden cicada shedding its shell technique. He chose to block the attack in front of Luo Shui. Looking at the wound on his chest, he finally recognized that it was called a living paper doll. Zhang Xiaoyan held the paper doll back with his own body, allowing Luo Shui to retreat into the demon ceiling formation for safety. Unfortunately, his cultivation is still shallow. He tried many methods but couldn't do anything to the paper man. At that moment, the paper man started wildly biting. In no time, it was reduced to a pile of black ashes. It was the second master of the Huang family, along with his helpers, coming to assist. The second master scooped up the black ashes from the ground and smeared them on Zhang Xiaoyan's chest. The black blood immediately stopped. Then Zhang Xiaoyan, carrying the three immortals, arrived outside the courtyard. He easily dealt with the crows and the remaining paper figures. Under the guidance of the immortals, he finally caught the leader of the strange birds. It turned out that a yellow weasel was controlling the crow swarm from inside. He was not happy about not finding the main culprit. At the same time, the three immortals possessed Zhang Xiaoyan's body. His body was filled with power. But Lord Yin is very cunning. He took advantage of Luo Shui's weakened body to forcefully possess her. At this moment, Zhang Xiaoyan was also in a difficult position. He didn't dare to harm Luo Shui's body. He could only threaten Lord Yin to come out quickly. But now, relying on this body, he began to feel fearless. This girl had caused him to lose a century of cultivation in a single day. There was no way to resolve the conflict between them, because they were left behind to guard the Yin gate in a secret place. Over time, much Yin energy accumulated within their bodies. And in March, July, and the lunar months, they attempt to shed their skin, to prevent the Yin energy from harming the human world. They swallow their shed skin and digest it. During digestion, they also need to find a highly Yin female body to assist. This cycle continues until the golden body is formed. Only then can they step onto the golden path. However, if this process is disrupted and the toad's skin cannot be digested, their own cultivation will be consumed by the Yin energy, until it dissipates. The explanation from old Yin caused Zhang Xiaoyan to angrily curse. How can the mighty golden path be achieved through corpse cultivation and corpse training? You can't even understand your own path. Still trying to seek revenge like others. At this moment, the voice of the ferret inside his body transmitted to Zhang Xiaoyan. You go ahead and bite his tongue. I'll get inside his body and deal with him. Zhang Xiaoyan thought, if you had this solution, you should have said so earlier. He immediately grabbed onto Tang Luoxue. A moment later, the girl collapsed weakly onto the ground, powerless. The ermine also entered her body. Then, a tiny shadow and a huge ermine shadow appeared behind the girl. Just as the ermine shadow was about to engulf the toad shadow, a flock of crows flew in and took away Mr. Yin. Looking at Mr. Yin in the sky, Mr. Huang told Xiaoyan not to worry, because today's helpers are more than just one ermine. To the south, a rabbit trips over something strange. To the north, a cat jumps over a corpse. The other immortal arriving is a tabby cat. The cat has the ability to control corpses. The crow's corpse on the ground instantly comes back to life. It attacks its kin in the air. They fight for a long time. The crow that Lord Yin was riding on was shot down. Just as he was about to threaten him to remove the corpse poison from the girl, Lord Yin exploded on the spot. When the smoke cleared, a large red coffin appeared before Zhang Xiaoyan. Lord Yin, cradling a small drum, stood above the coffin. He swallowed the drum in one gulp, and began frantically beating it with his claws. Accompanying the drumbeat, the coffin lid began to crack. The things inside are about to burst forth from the coffin. I suffered inhuman treatment in my life. Even after 100 years of death, my hands cannot recover from their position of weeping and covering my face. I was born into a comfortable family. I was outstandingly beautiful since childhood. At 18, there was a drought for years. This year, my family was chosen for the rain summoning ceremony. I was locked in a small dark room and forced to drink that so-called divine tea. Until the day of the rain ceremony, when they stripped me naked. They covered my entire body with scalding wax. Right at noon, my eyes were covered with a red cloth and I was exposed to the intense sun. I was really afraid they would succeed in summoning rain. All I could do was silently curse in my heart. If the heavens want to make it rain, let my boundless resentment dry up the clouds in the sky. It's fortunate that I waited until I was sun-dried. Not a single drop of rain ever fell. Amidst the cold, sinister laughter, the endless malice began to spread in all directions. Everyone in the courtyard felt a tightening in their lower backs. Even the 3 flames of yang on them were blown weaker by 3 parts. The abbot hurriedly reminded them, the more firewood gathered, the higher the flame. Embracing each other can make the fire burn stronger. Zhang Xiaoyan quickly followed the instructions, but the girl's face turned bright red in embarrassment. Old Master Yin also had a plan. He summoned the crow's hoof blood. using the blood of this ominous creature to break the spell. Next comes the performance of self-sabotage. He turned his head to look at the crowd. Everyone felt as if they were immersed in magma. They screamed in pain from the burning. In the moment of danger, Master Su Yuan stepped forward. He used his own essence blood to summon the statues of Weitua and the Arhat. No matter how Lord Yin beat the drum, the White Sha was so frightened that he knelt on the ground, not daring to move. A few punches later, her head was smashed in. Just as he was about to deliver a serious punch to Yin Laoyi, an uninvited guest intercepted the blow. Zhang Xiaoyan recognized him as the mysterious spirit that appeared in the half-jar incident. This time, he reappeared, and effortlessly intercepted Su Yuan's attack. He waved his hand lightly. Half of the master's arm was immediately severed. Then he looked at Lord Yin and called him a waste. With a single strike, he cut off half of his body. In the end, you're just a mortal. You say you're fasting and praying to cultivate what? I'm most annoyed by you old bald monks. You were given 4 years, and yet you couldn't change this chaotic world. In that case, die at the hands of my flame finger path. Hearing this name, Master Su Yuan's mood plunged to the lowest point. This person is known as the one who holds the extinction. It is said that there are 10 people in the world who have the qualification to alter the heavenly Tao. The strength of these 10 individuals is as great as their reputation. Under the aura of Flame Finger, Zhang Xiaoyan was almost gasping for air. It was still Master Su Yuan who called all his disciples to strengthen the Arhat statue. Only then could he match him in momentum. Unfortunately, the gap in strength is still vast. Su Yuan and his disciples still couldn't stop the flame from burning fingers. Seeing this, Zhang Xiaoyan quickly recited the incantation. He hoped to subdue him with the Qiankuan bag, just like last time. The Qiankuan bag seemed to be very effective against burning fingers. In an instant, his strange fire was sucked into the bag. Master Su Yuan also regained his composure. He summoned the Weitua flower with his last ounce of strength. This thing can dispel resentment and bring on the dawn, no matter what evil spirits. Sunlight is very effective in suppressing them, but the Qiren wasn't in a hurry at all. He caught a petal and gazed at it intently. His hands trembled with excitement. Suddenly, he leaped up. I snatched the Weitua flower from the Dharma Master's hand. I didn't expect you to actually summon it. Thank you so much. Illusory beings are ephemeral. Only this Weitua flower can stabilize one's soul. Even the Burning Finger Taoist didn't expect to obtain such a good thing here today. With the Weitua flower, I can make up for my own shortcomings. His strength has become even more terrifying. He then fixed his gaze on the Qiankuan bag behind Zhang Xiaoyan. Such a good item must not be overlooked and encountered. He was about to take it. But suddenly, 8 people dressed in costumes appeared nearby. With the sound of drums coming from behind them, the 8 quickly moved. They surrounded the fire-fingered monk in the center. The bell lady finally arrived. She worked together with the drum player to set up the grand formation. The Burning Finger Taoist didn't expect that in this remote place, there would be someone capable of setting up the 8 immortals killing formation. At this point, it was too late to take the universe bag. He could only temporarily seal it. Just then, dawn began to break. Anyway, he had already obtained the Weitua flower. Ranji didn't want to be entangled with them any longer. As his figure slowly faded away, the incident came to an end. Zhang Xiaoyan originally thought that life would return to normal, but the bell lady informed her of something that needed to be dealt with. The day after the incident ended, he came at her invitation. There was a bowl of rice with chopsticks stuck upright in it in front of him. Zhang Xiaoyan sat down. A few people started calling out and exchanging cups. While eating, he asked his mother-in-law about Luo Shue's poison. His mother-in-law told him that Luo Shue had been taken away by her own people for treatment. She should be saved. During the meal, he also learned about the immortals from that night. The killing formation was actually just for scaring people. Those few people couldn't activate it at all. Just as he put down his bowl and chopsticks, a wave of dizziness hit me. I saw him fall. My mother-in-law also signaled to the 2 people beside her. Okay. Let's begin. They all deserve a lesson. Because this thing is called inverted head rice. It's food specifically for the dead. If a living person accidentally eats the reverse rice, they will walk in the underworld in their dreams. If they can pass through the gates of the underworld, they will learn how much time they have left to live. After the bellwoman inserted 3 chopsticks into Zhang Xiaoyan's mouth, his consciousness began to fade. When he opened his eyes again, he found himself beside his mother. No matter how much he called out, his mother and the pedestrians on the street couldn't see him. Just as his mother turned into the alley, he saw 3 people holding machetes following her. Worried that his mother might be in danger, he quickly followed them. Zhang Xiaoyan didn't think much. He stepped forward to block the 3 people holding the weapons. Before he could say anything, one of them suddenly pressed a sharp blade against his neck. Meanwhile, in the real world, Ling Dangpa also saw the sudden bloody line appear on his neck. He's encountered the hungry ghost gate. The old woman hurriedly burned Joss paper. At that moment, in Zhang Xiaoyan's pocket, which was under attack, a stack of banknotes suddenly appeared. Those people didn't trouble him further after grabbing the money. But the next second, a rooster crowed behind him. The rooster was extremely fierce. It started devouring a rat right in front of Zhang Xiaoyan. Then it started pecking furiously at him. In reality, Ling Dangpa also felt something. She began throwing millet into the brazier. At the same time, something started flowing out of Zhang Xiaoyan's pocket. While Brother Ji was pecking at the millet, Zhang Xiaoyan sprinted away. He ran deep into the alley. But just as one problem subsided, another arose. A few black dogs appeared in front, blocking the way. Vicious dogs, vicious dogs. These vicious dogs are blocking the path. Suddenly, a dog-beating stick appeared in Zhang Xiaoyan's hand. With the help of the stick, he quickly scared off the vicious dog. He then continued running down the alley. At the end of the alley, he found a barbecue stall. Young man, want some grilled skewers? Zhang Xiaoyan finally met someone he could talk to. He hurriedly asked the owner where this place was. The boss chuckled. He told him that this place was called 10th Street. Once you get here, there's no going back. Then he took out a grilled skewer by himself, and handed it to Zhang Xiaoyan. If you want to get through me, you'll have to finish this skewer first. By now, Zhang Xiaoyan still hadn't figured out what was going on. I can only obediently eat the grilled skewers. The man pointed to the rolled-up door behind him. Only by answering his 3 questions can I leave through the door. The first question, how can one live a life as vibrant as summer flowers, and die as peacefully as autumn leaves? Zhang Xiaoyan pondered for a while. It should be belief. Only when a person has faith, does life have meaning. Second question, do flowers have their day to bloom again? Do people have a chance to be reborn? A person's life will not happen twice. Some people struggle even through their first. Final question, does your stomach still hurt? I can't figure out what men really mean. Zhang Xiaoyan still answered truthfully. No, it doesn't hurt. Suddenly, a portal appeared behind the man. Seeing that he wasn't saying anything more, Zhang Xiaoyan ran towards the portal. In reality, the chopsticks in Zhang Xiaoyan's hand snapped in response. Then he suddenly woke up with a start, as if he had just had an incredibly real dream. The bell-ringing old woman also began to explain to Zhang Xiaoyan why he had to eat this reversed rice. It was all because that night, Zhang Xiaoyan had invited the 3 immortals to possess him at Wenzhong Temple. He was not a disciple of the exorcist, nor did he have protective charms. Inviting the 3 immortals recklessly would consume a huge amount of his lifespan. Then the grandmother handed him a bowl of oil tea. She told him that drinking it would reveal the length of his life. But as soon as the oil tea entered his stomach started churning violently. The vomit on the ground began to slowly bubble. In no time, it transformed into several insects covered in millet. The grandmother told him these were called golden armored life-biting bugs. The number of bugs he vomited represented how many months of life he had left. Zhang Xiaoyan looked at the 9 bugs that Yi had summoned. He was so stunned that he couldn't say a word. In 9 months, he wouldn't even make it to the college entrance exam. The man beside him saw how calm Zhang Xiaoyan was. He couldn't help but compliment him on his good mindset. I didn't expect you to be so unruffled at such a young age. Well, I won't lie to you. Actually, each bug represents 1 day. You only have 9 days left to live. Having said that, he picked up a golden beetle. He hadn't even lifted his hand when the insect snapped in 2. There. Now you only have 8 days left. Zhang Xiaoyan's mood was incredibly low on his way home. He didn't know why his life, such a big change has occurred. I don't know what others would do if they knew. They only had 8 days left to live. Anyway, he wouldn't usually buy cigarettes. But today, he smoked without feeling guilty. Not sure if it's just his illusion, but he actually saw the deceased Masaner. At this moment, Zhang Xiaoyan wasn't scared either. He said with a feigned nonchalance, "Fellow Taoist, long time no see, I've missed you. I'll be seeing you soon." Zhang Xiaoyan finally realized this wasn't an illusion. Stop with the nonsense. I only have the time for 1 cigarette. Let me tell you a secret about longevity. At that time, you need to hurry and find an elderly man wearing a yellow robe. He is the god of Shogun. Then, show him the items you obtained from slaying the 3 households. That will give you a chance to extend your life. Your Shogun day is tomorrow night from 5 p.m. to 5 a.m. During that time, you must not sleep. I have 3 camphor wood nails here. It's specially made for nailing 3 houses. Keep it safe. This matter must not be known to a third person. Otherwise, the consequences will be unimaginable. Have you ever played a spirit game called Black Big Sister? The medium requires a pure black butterfly. First, nail the different parts of the black butterfly onto the 5 characters: life, death, determination, separation. Take out a nail and prick the index finger of each person who is going to participate in the game. Then, each person presses their index finger on the butterfly's wings and recites the corresponding incantation together. During this process, the butterfly's body will tremble continuously until the nail is freed. At this point, the participants can begin. asking Black Sister questions in order. The black butterfly will crawl in 4 directions to help you find answers. But just when it was Xiaowi's turn to ask a question, everyone suddenly heard a cat's cry in the darkness. Then, the girl named Xiaowi ran out as if possessed. After hearing the details, Zhang Xiaoyan told the girl not to play with these spiritual games, because the nature of these games is to lower. The purpose of using one's own yang energy is to achieve spiritual communication. During this process, it's easy to be possessed by evil spirits. Zhang Xiaoyan was originally planning his action to eliminate 3 households tomorrow night, but he received a distress message from Lu Yusen. By the time they arrived, they saw the girl sitting on the ground in a strange posture. He used the falling eye technique to investigate her background. In his eyes, Xiaowi's evil spirit actually has 4 forked tails. Young man, are you using the Luochan eye? Zhang Xiaoyan knew he had been discovered, but he showed no intention of escaping, because the old Tong scroll records, forked demons, forked devils, Sancha Sicha Dugutuo, with his current strength, it's impossible for him to escape in front of Dugutuo. As expected, when he recognized the falling cicada eye, he guessed that Zhang Xiaoyan must be a descendant of the Tongxing lineage. Dugutuo's true form is a 7-life cat demon, but 3 of its lives were severed by Zhang Xiaoyan's ancestor. Upon hearing this, Zhang Xiaoyan knew the matter couldn't be easily resolved. He used the golden cicada shedding its shell technique to attempt escape. Unfortunately, he was easily stopped by Dugutuo, but he wasn't trying to kill Zhang Xiaoyan. Instead, he wanted to take over his body. With his spellcasting, Zhang Xiaoyan's consciousness grew increasingly blurry. By the time Dugutuo's soul entered Zhang Xiaoyan's body, he was shocked to find that he couldn't invade his primordial spirit. At the same time, the Qiankuan pouch on his back, sealed by the Flame Finger Master, began to heat up. The strange fire aura left by the Flame Finger was now eroding Dugutuo's soul. To protect himself, he had no choice but to use his tail to forcibly extract his own soul. But what he didn't know was that this Qiankuan pouch was specially designed to absorb souls. As soon as he left Zhang Xiaoyan's body, he was sucked into the Qiankuan bag. He didn't know how much time had passed. It was only when Zhang Xiaoyan woke up from the sickbed that he didn't have time to ask anything else. He first asked the girl what time it was. When he learned it was noon, 12 o'clock, he finally relaxed. Then he wrote down a bunch of things. After sending the girl away, he began preparing for tonight's ritual of severing the 3 corpses. In Ashui's comics, to enter the Gingshan realm, one needs to use black cloth as a base. Then place 3 candles on the upper, middle, and lower parts of the body. This is to observe when the 3-foot aura appears. Apply toothpaste to the soles of the feet and between the toes. It is said that this thing can bring a person into a state between sleep and wakefulness. Holding a garlic bulb in the left hand can summon one's soul. Holding a green fruit in the right hand helps the soul return. The process of cutting 3 feet must ensure that you do not fall asleep. Wait until the candlelight above your head turns green. This means the spirit must appear first. At this moment, he hurriedly crushes the garlic bulb. With the help of the garlic scent, Zhang Xiaoyan can enter the Gingshan state. Only then can he see the 3 corpses. After a moment of dizziness, he saw another version of Zhang Xiaoyan floating out of his body. The 3 corpses are actually his inner demons. Seeing an identical version of himself, Zhang Xiaoyan was also somewhat disturbed. But in order to survive, he had no choice but to strike at his own 3 corpses. But at the moment the dagger pierced his body, the person standing in front of him had actually turned into a fat man. He tearfully accused Zhang Xiaoyan. If it weren't for him, he and Xiao Lu wouldn't have died. This was an eternal pain in Zhang Xiaoyan's heart. One by one, the friends around him had left him. At this moment, he didn't even want to go on slaying his 3 corpses to extend his life. But just as he saw the fat man's nails, he suddenly woke up. He struck his forehead with the camphor-wood nail hidden in his hand, because the last fragment of his consciousness reminded him that only the nails of the 3 corpses are black. He picked up the black nail fragment dropped by the upper corpse. He knew that the item Ma-san mentioned was probably referring to this. Then he looked at his true body. The middle corpse and lower corpse would soon appear. He knew the yellow smoke was the main appetites. The red one was the main lust's corpse. Zhang Xiaoyan followed the guidance and found one of the corpses. He didn't expect them to be in the Gingshan realm. This appetite's clone was still eating instant noodles with ham. He couldn't stand his own poor appearance. He directly hammered a camphor-wood nail into its forehead. He just picked up the fallen object. I felt a dampness against my ear. Turning around, I found that Tang Luoxue, lightly clad, had embraced me from behind. Though I knew the girl was a lower realm cultivator, Zhang Xiaoyan's Dao heart faltered. He pushed the girl away while simultaneously suppressing his qi. But Tang Luoxue clung to him relentlessly. Meanwhile, it seems there is something in Zhang Xiaoyan's bag that's about to break free. Luckily, the garlic in the bag proved useful at a critical moment. Xiaoyan was jolted slightly. In pain, Zhang Xiaoyan cried out. However, this action successfully quelled his desire. The camphor-wood nail fell again. By this point, the situation was already resolved. I only need to find the Shogunshin to prolong my life. After a long and arduous search, I finally found a living person within the Gungshin territory. Just as he wondered why the old man wasn't wearing yellow robes, a bronze basin was thrown at his feet. Zhang Xiaoyan had no other choice. He threw everything left behind by the three corpse gods into it. Soon, the old man began to be enveloped in a yellow light. Zhang Xiaoyan looked closely. Wasn't this the old man in yellow clothes that Ma San mentioned? Shogun God. The first clash between gods and demons. It ended with the Yin demon Dao achieving a complete victory. He thought that after severing the three corpses, he could prolong his life. But Shogun God told him he could only extend his life by 3 days. 3 days later, the three households in the body will condense again. Only by repeating this cycle can one extend their life. Zhang Xiaoyan walked back dejectedly. But the Dugu Tua inside the Qiankuan bag disagreed. He snatched off the cap of the guardian god, revealing a terrifying face. At this moment, he was like a parasite living inside Zhang Xiaoyan's body. If he dies, he couldn't survive either. Seeing that he could not extract the method of extending life from the guardian god of Gung, Dugu Tua swallowed him whole. The battle between gods and demons lasts only an instant in the blink of an eye. When the dust finally settled, the guardian god of Gung had already died at Zhang Xiaoyan's feet. Then, 2 fish, one black and one white, crawled out of the copper basin. They intertwined with each other. It finally transformed into a taiji pattern. Zhang Xiaoyan caught the 2 pearls formed by the fish spirits. He sensed a new fate starting to grow within him. It was already beginning to take root inside his body. The Shen of Gung used his last bit of strength to close the Gingshan realm. He intended to trap Zhang Xiaoyan here to die. But at this moment it was Dugutu who was controlling this body. The demon lord didn't fear the roadblock, Lord Yen. Every time he falls, he loses a life. By the time he escapes the Gingshan realm, he has already lost 3 lives. Zhang Xiaoyan can sense everything that Du Gu Tua does with his body, but he doesn't know he has already committed the great sin of killing a god. The next day, Ma San visits again. He gives him this fly soul umbrella. I hope to lend him a helping hand during the upcoming great calamity. Not long after, 3 elders indeed came to his door. Zhang Xiaoyan sensed the murderous aura from them. He immediately tried to run. The elder in the middle warned him. It's raining and the road is slippery. Be careful not to fall. It was as if those words had some kind of magic. Zhang Xiaoyan immediately fell flat on his face. The old man in black spoke up right after. The ground is so muddy. Be careful not to get stuck. And then something strange happened. The ground, which was originally solid, now seemed like a swamp, slowly swallowing him up. Just as he was left with only his head, a group of black cats rushed over and dragged him out. But a white cat suddenly appeared in front of the 3 old men. Its appearance scared away the group of wild cats. The old men used their canes to hold his head and warned him. The way of heaven cannot be violated. Heaven's mandate cannot be defied. You have committed the great crime of killing a god. There was only one way out, death. Just as he was about to fall into the ground, he hurriedly shouted that the godly garment was still on him. Like a toy, he was released again by several people. Zhang Xiaoyan pretended to take off his clothes, but in fact, he had already grabbed the fly soul umbrella behind him. The moment he opened the umbrella, a powerful suction force erupted from the umbrella. At the same time, countless ghostly hands reached out to grab the elderly men. The group no longer hid their intentions. Illusory images of 4 divine beasts appeared behind them. An elder threw out a red cloth. The white cat followed closely behind. The moment the red cloth was torn apart, the white cat revealed its true form. The divine beast, the white tiger, descends. Dugu Tua initially didn't want to confront these 4 heavens mandate enforcers, but he couldn't let Zhang Xiaoyan die. Dugu Tuo's strength is unfathomable. With just one strike, he dealt with the divine beast, the white tiger. The moment he made his move, the 3 old men sensed the aura of the Yin demon sect. Then the 4 of them engaged in a fierce battle. Facing the siege, Dugu Tua was weak and outnumbered, but he practiced the 50 Yin demon sect, allowing him to summon Yin demons for assistance. Faced with this formation, the 4 divine beasts did not dare to be careless. But in this day and age, as the saying goes, the higher the skill, the greater the danger. Even 3 people working together cannot defeat Dugu Tua. For hundreds of years, no one has been able to harm them. Now, as the death tribulation approaches, it is caused by a few, breaking through the heart demon and achieving a breakthrough on the battlefield. 3 people and a cat have comprehended the true meaning of the 4 divine beasts. They successfully set up the 4 symbols transformation formation. Only the yellow dragon soared into the sky from the heart of the formation. Dugu Tua refused to wait for death. He used all his skills to attack the yellow dragon. Only when the yellow dragon was mostly eroded by the Yin energy, did he find a chance to use his hidden 5th claw to grab Dugu Tua. Unfortunately, the seal was broken, and Zhang Xiaoyan's annihilation fire was stimulated. At that moment, a 3-way balance was surprisingly achieved. The one who breaks the balance is Dugu Tua. This demon has cultivated for several lifetimes, but has never been able to step into the true realm of demons. He is both righteous and evil, his actions guided entirely by his own heart. Compared to Zhang Xiaoyan, he despises these so-called gods and Buddhas more than anyone. And since there's no way to survive, let's die together. The disintegration of Duga Tuo's soul caused the balance to collapse. Except for Zhang Xiaoyan, everyone else's souls scattered. He became the biggest winner. Not only was the extinguishing fire sealing the Qiankuan bag eliminated, but the ticking time bomb of Duga Tuo inside his body was also destroyed. He wanted to leave, but was stopped by someone claiming to be Mr. Meng'er. He was pulled into a special space. The old man told him many things. He spoke about the 10 people who changed paths and the cycle of reincarnation. The rest of it was a blur to him. But when the old man mentioned the Gung divine garment on him, and how it could enter the three houses realm to absorb life force and extend life, Zhang Xiaoyan was so happy he cried with joy. He couldn't care less about the grand or minor paths. The important thing is to stay alive, without any worries. He listened even more attentively. The burning finger Taoist has already collected the elusive flower and the extinguishing fire. If he gathers the 10 objects, reincarnation will completely cease. Heaven's way will change. I've said so much. The old man wants him to set up the Zhangxing Juhai Great Formation, to open the gate of reincarnation and stop the changing of paths. The difficulty of the Zhangxing Juhai Great Formation lies in the 5 formation eyes. It requires collecting items from 5 different demons, plus a drop of zombie blood. Counting them up, Zhang Xiaoyan already has the wolf skin vest, the ghost girl's tears, and the demon eye he just acquired. Then he gave Zhang Xiaoyan a gold-threaded painting. This was the help he could offer. The rest was up to him. You can slack off in class, but you're not allowed to go alone when fetching water from the well. On the first day in the tutoring class, Zhang Xiaoyan was a bit curious about what the teacher had said. At that moment, the bespectacled guy beside him started explaining something that happened to a relative. 3 years ago, his cousin was studying here. One afternoon, she wasn't feeling well, so she went back to the dorm early to rest. Before she could even open the door, a strange wind suddenly blew in from the window at the end of the hallway. The wind carried with it many black particles. The girl didn't think much of it. She went inside and started resting. She vaguely sensed that someone had entered, and was continuously getting closer to her. Suddenly, she felt something lift her up. Just like that, she was uncontrollably lifted to the top of the stairs. The gatekeeper tried to stop her, but he couldn't catch up to the girl who was floating in the air, until he witnessed the girl jumping from the second-floor window. According to witnesses, after the girl fell, she was still carried and floated for 100 meters. It wasn't until several passers-by noticed something was wrong that they stopped it. The security guard, who witnessed the whole thing, resigned the next day. He was still muttering the words, ghost-picking people, when he left. After hearing the story, a young man named Liang Long loudly contradicted everyone. If it's really that eerie, this art studio wouldn't even get off the ground. He then said he needed a quiet moment to calm down with a smoke. The atmosphere was clearly ruined. A group of people decided to go to the water room to get some water. But as luck would have it, they encountered that ominous wind. Since there were so many of them at the time, they were not afraid, and instead, they started sizing it up through the door. But then they remembered that Liang Long was still alone outside. However, no one dared to risk going out to find him. At this moment, Zhang Xiaoyan stepped forward. He bit his thumb. He quickly tapped each of his classmates on the forehead. You all stay here and don't move. I'm going to save Liang Long. He came to the corridor with a flashlight. He found that Liang Long had already been lifted up. Zhang Xiaoyan saw that he couldn't catch him. He hurriedly called for his companion's help. The crowd pulled him hard. Luckily, they didn't let Liang Long jump out of the window. Time was running out. Zhang Xiaoyan fumbled to take out the lighter from his pocket. Then, he drew a protective blood talisman on his thumb. He needed to see what exactly was causing the trouble. Sure enough, a ghostly face appeared at Liang Long's waist. It was as if he was sliding while carrying Liang Long. Zhang Xiaoyan doesn't spoil him. He spat at the ghostly creature. Under the effect of the yin-binding talisman, the ghostly creature turned back into a cloud of ash. Liang Long was also saved. One of the girls with a cleanliness obsession thought it was over, and was about to wipe the bloodstain from her forehead. Zhang Xiaoyan was about to stop her. The girl has already been lifted up. The incident happened suddenly. Everyone was unable to stop it in time. The girl flew out of the window. Zhang Xiaoyan told them to make a call for help. He himself quickly chased after her. The girl flew farther and farther. Before he knew it, he had chased her to the outskirts of the county's west side. When Zhang Xiaoyan caught up with her, the girl had already drunk several large mouthfuls of dirty water. He quickly jumped into the water, trying to pull the girl onto the shore. But to his surprise, there were many water plants at the bottom of the lake, things that were pulling them down. Fortunately, the Qiankuan bag had already been unsealed. Zhang Xiaoyan sucked all the at the bottom of the water into the bag, without the obstruction of the spirits. He easily pulled the girl ashore. Only then did he have the time to survey his surroundings. He saw countless black ashes flying out from the crematorium on the opposite bank. These ashes did not dissolve in water, but instead rose with the wind. Over the years, they had accumulated more and more. As the saying goes, monks are cremated into relics, while ordinary people's ashes scatter into dust. If this cannot dissipate, it will accumulate and cause trouble. The next day at noon, he brought a goose egg to the lakeside, intending to capture the inside it. There is a saying among the people, Yangguan rooster, Yingguan goose. This goose egg is used to gather. Zhang Xiaoyan threw the broken goose egg into the lake. Before long, a whirlpool started to form in the center of the lake. Shadows flowed beneath the surface. If these evil spirits are ignored, they will plague the world. But if they are collected into the Qiankun bag, they can evolve. The old boys scroll records. With each level of evolution, the Qiankun bag will gain new abilities. Once he absorbs all the evil spirits in the lake, the Qiankun bag has also evolved a second-level mysterious pattern. Flower string knot. Twist and twist. Red thread end. Move your fingers. I'll weave the thread ends. You untangle the knots. I'll weave the hemp ropes, and you make the flowers. You got it wrong. Zhang Xiaoyan woke up from a nightmare, and found the silence terrifying. He looked around, and discovered his teacher and friends lying on the ground, clutching their stomachs. He looked at the loach, only its bones remaining, yet, still wriggling. He understood what had happened to his friends. The strange phenomenon is closely related to it, because of the ghostly incident that happened in Old Sun's studio. He took his students to the lakeside to relax over the weekend. Just as they were about to fish, an old shepherd stopped them. The old shepherd told them that the fish in the lake shouldn't be caught. If you do, disaster will strike. But the young men clearly weren't listening. They almost got into a conflict with the old owner. After he left, Old Sun tossed up a loach. Everyone examined it carefully. They didn't find anything special about this lake loach. But after it was cooked, they knew they had been hasty. This wild loach was not only delicious, it still has a chewy texture. Zhang Xiaoyan, with a sense of awe, heeded the elder's warning. He didn't eat fish with them. Reflecting on the various recent events, he slowly fell asleep, when he was startled awake by a nightmare. This was the scene that unfolded. He quickly threw the fishbone into the lake. He bowed deeply. We are just passing tourists. We meant no offense to the spirit of the lake. Please forgive us. Seeing that there was no movement from the lake, he continued to bow. I am Zhang Xiaoyan, the leader of the Tongxing sect. I humbly ask, fellow cultivator, to show mercy. No matter how much he pleaded, the surface of the lake remained still. As time passed, everyone's stomachs grew larger and larger. Like balloons, they floated into the air. The higher they flew, Zhang Xiaoyan couldn't think of any way to stop them. Then there was a loud bang. A rain of blood splashed across his face. He looked incredulously at the blood on his hands. He had only eaten a fish. Was it really necessary to go this far? All living beings have their fate. Even if it's a life for a life, it should have ended, right? But all he received in response was another falling corpse. Zhang Xiaoyan was filled with rage. He exerted all his strength to activate the Qiankun bag. The entire lake was sucked into the bag. He wanted to see what could make someone act so ruthlessly. Sensing the true master had appeared, Zhang Xiaoyan spoke again. He begged the other side to spare his companion, but the response he got was still a cold corpse. In his anger and frustration, he activated the Eye of Darkness left by Dugutuo, pulling his opponent into the realm of shadow demons. The tail behind him, filled with rage, stabbed toward the monster, but the monster simply swung its hand and blocked Zhang Xiaoyan's attack. Then, a bone sprouted from its waist. The tip of it emitted a chilling light. Zhang Xiaoyan's bones were shattered entirely. If not for being in the Yin demon realm, that blow would have killed him. Between life and death, the demon eye automatically protected its master, summoning a ram demon projection from the 50 Yin demon path. He saw that his opponent cultivated the bone-gazing technique, an extremely difficult technique to master. Cultivating it from white bones to black bones takes a millennium. But the goat demon, as a notorious villain, is not afraid. He unleashes his ultimate technique, the demon gong. A gong inscribed with strange runes of darkness materializes behind him, along with his attack. Smoke billows into the sky. The no harm from smoke rule is triggered. This strike causes no damage to the opponent. At the same time, a huge loach slowly emerged from the smoke. This creature is called a fallen dragon. Loaches and carps share the same fate, but different origins. The carp leaps over the dragon gate and transforms into a dragon, but the loach can only gaze at the winds and clouds throughout its life. It has the bones of a dragon, but no dragon form. The fallen dragon appears before our eyes. The sheep demon summoned the ancestor of sheep demons to fight, but it's only a remnant left by Dugutuo, a phantom summoned by a single demonic eye. He can't exert his full strength. Although he injured the fallen dragon, the projection of the ancestor of sheep demons is also polluted by the flowing dragon blood. The fallen dragon's blood transforms into tentacles, beginning to devour everything in front of it. Even the sheep demon himself couldn't escape. This was the closest Zhang Xiaoyan had ever come to death. Even using all his trump cards, he couldn't defeat the enemy. He felt incredibly small, incredibly vulnerable. His flesh and bones felt like they were leaving him. Logically, he should already be dead. But why does he still have consciousness? Between life and death lies great terror, but also great opportunity. He understood that the enemy could destroy his body, but could not extinguish the will in his heart. Enlightenment was but a moment. His Qianquan bag, seizing this opportunity, evolved to the Black Rakshasa realm. Zhang Xiaoyan reversed the situation, swallowing the giant loach into the bag. At this moment, applause came from behind. I didn't expect a mortal to be fearless of life and death, and to achieve such enlightenment, and transcend. That's a Qianquan bag you're carrying, isn't it? I've seen something incredible today. Zhang Xiaoyan recognized him as the old shepherd from the very beginning. He asked about the shepherd's connection to the loach. It turns out that since the appearance of this black water pond, there has always been a dish and a loach. The two have been companions and intertwined. For 1,000 years, they have called each other brothers. They also practice the method of bone observation together. Zhang Xiaoyan angrily questioned, is the path of cultivation for 1,000 years the path of killing and shortening lives? Is there not a shred of compassion in your heart? The elder rebutted, no one can define good or evil. I am evil in your heart. You are evil in my heart as well. We each have our own stance. In the end, let me give you one piece of advice. All living things have their fate. It's better to keep good thoughts than to indulge in a fleeting desire for words. Zhang Xiaoyan felt like waking from a dream. The sounds of his companions arguing with Elder Yang echoed in his ears. At this moment, it had returned to the scene when they first arrived by the lake. Was everything that happened just now an illusion? Looking at the old man's meaningful gaze, Zhang Xiaoyan reminded himself that he must not let the tragedy that just occurred happen again. Old son, we're not having fish today. Amidst the complaints from his companions, Zhang Xiaochang let out a long breath.